Hello and welcome to a look at Iron Lord for the Amiga, a game that was released by Ubisoft. Other versions of this game exists, but of course I'm only going to be concerned about the Amiga version because the video is an Amiga game video. The plot of Iron Lord is the fact that the king, Tibor or something, has a nightly visitor, his brother that he hasn't seen for many years. And of course the brother has turned bad. He was already bad to begin with, but now he's turned more bad. And various different events happens, and then he, using magic, causes Tibor to die in rather an unpleasant fashion. And using his dark powers, he summons all sorts of unpleasant creatures, which overwhelms the castle's guards and massacres everyone, except for the guard captain. He quickly realizes that the castle is lost, so he takes the king's son and protects him while he rides off in the darkness, eventually arriving at a forest where he sees a hut. Entering the hut, he's met by an elderly gentleman who presents himself even as a wizard, claiming that he was well aware that the guard captain and the king's son would be arriving, and he prepared a meal for them. He is fully aware of the brother's evil power and how strong he is. The brother, by the way, is called Soltar, appropriately dramatic name. But anyway, the wizard tells the guard captain to raise the child as a fierce warrior, and he does that. And several years later, the player character, the king's son, is ready to take up the fight against his uncle, because there's some thing about only someone of the same blood can actually defeat Zoltar. So the king being dead, he has no chance of doing so, so it's up to the son. And that's where the game starts. In order to have a chance to face off against Zoltar, you need to go and try to gather an army of some description, and the way you have to do that is by convincing the different citizens that you are actually a worthy leader, and as such you will do what is necessary to gather men for you. There's no mention of it in the manual, but I assume that the different individuals in this game have no clue of the player character actually being the king's son, so they treat him like he's got no authority, because of course he has no proven authority. In order to earn the individual's trust, the player character will have to do various tasks for them, and some of them are actually explain to you what they are, and some of them are not. In this specific version, the herbalist wants a specific item, but there's no indication of him wanting it. I got that hint from the Commodore 64 version, but that should become obvious later on. Once you've helped each individual, they will provide 100 men of various descriptions. It could be mercenaries, it could be outright soldiers and whatnot. So of course you can imagine that the more people you try to help, the larger an army you will have to face off against your uncle's dark forces. The game does state that you can actually engage into the final battle after gathering one unit, but I wouldn't recommend it. Not at all. The game map consists of various different locations that you can travel to, and the different locations has one or more NPCs that you can speak to, and you can talk about various topics about the deadly army that some of them believe is a rumor and some of them believe to be very real, and you can talk about various other things. Some of them won't talk to you at all because they need someone else's approval of you before they will even speak to you, and it is a bit of a run from one character and speak to them in order to find out what another character might want from them, kind of thing, from time to time, which can be a bit interesting. The game also contains various minigames which are not just there for the fun of it, they are quite important, because you are usually rewarded with something that is crucial for progression in the game. Maybe not direct progression, but helping others, so they will help you by giving you more men. And the first minigame you will likely bump into is the archery competition, in which you have to win 3 rounds of archery in order to be awarded the cup for being the champion, of course. And spoiler, the herbalist, as is stated in the Windows 64 version, claims that he would have joined the archery competition, but he feels his constitution is too weak. So there was a hint in that version that he might be interested in the cup once you win it. So basically you are put in a position where, in order to get the herbalist's help, you need to win the archery competition, which is somewhat easier said than done. Speaking of the archery competition, quickly go over the archery interface. You have to shoot 7 arrows at 7 different you have 4 arrows per target, but you have 7 targets per round, and you need to set the direction in which you shoot, the angle of which you shoot, and how much power, and based on how you hit or not hit, you can try and adjust. There's also a wind factor, and it seems a bit hit and miss how that affects the arrow, but of course longer distances means that it has a greater effect on the arrow's flight. If you hit bullseye, you get 100 gold. It doesn't score you 100 points, it actually only scores you 99 points, and for reference, in the 3rd round you need, as far as I can gather, to score 640 points in order to win that round. And considering the fact that you have 7 targets and you can score 99 at the maximum, you don't have much room for not hitting your target well. Other minigames, you have the gambling, where you can try and earn money from throwing some dice, and there's also an arm wrestling competition, which I will showcase towards the end of the video, and it is a competition in which you face off against 9 opponents in one sitting, and in order to beat them you have to wiggle-waggle your joystick into oblivion in order to beat the different opponents, and if you should fail, you will start back at the first opponent, and I could easily imagine that for certain people that would be a direct blocker for further progression in the game, because it is not your average rhythmic wiggle-waggle. You have to be a first-class wiggle-waggler in order to beat that, win that competition. Let's talk technical aspect. From a graphical point of view, this game is all over the place. There's certain bits of the graphics which looks very, very nice. The overland map, for instance, is one such thing. And then you have other bits of the graphics even, which looks bizarre. A lot of the NPCs look a bit over the top. I mean, it is a sort of adventure game, so there's some liberty taken in that regard, I guess. But this individual, for instance, yeah. But there's also quite a few places where the graphics is extremely dark compared to what you would want from it, usually the minigame sections, and it makes the graphics look extremely muddled. The general graphics quality floats a bit between good and not too bad, but it is, in my opinion, extremely inconsistent, and I think it makes it look a bit overall messy. The sound design, there's the tune by Darren Tell, which is playing at all times except for when you are in minigames. And while the tune is a very, very high quality tune and very, very decent sounding by and large, I have to admit, from my personal point of view, it gets a bit repetitive after a while. The fact that it restarts every single time you exit a section that actually prevents the music from playing can get rather tedious. I acknowledge the fact that it is a decent sounding tune, but yeah, as I said, it gets a bit too repetitive, at least for me. Sound effects, there are not many sound effects, and they're not worth spending time talking about because, yeah, they are, what can I say? Now, the controls, they are a bit wonky because the game allows for mouse and joystick control, and in certain sections it requires mouse control, and in other sections it requires joystick control, and that mismatch thing is a bit wonky. The pointer you use and tell your hero where to go, for instance, can only be mouse controlled, but once he's in a town of some description, you can actually control him, using the joystick to move him around. But you still need to click the mouse in order to interact with stuff. So it is a bit bizarre. It works, it's just a bit awkward. The gameplay. I have probably covered most of the gameplay earlier on in the video, but certain people apparently claimed that this game was supposed to be sort of a Defender of the Crown, but with more gameplay. Compared to the Amiga version of Defender of the Crown, more gameplay doesn't mean much. It's a decent game, but gameplay-wise it is extremely lacking, and doing better than that shouldn't be a challenge for anyone who actually took the time to design a game. People have been saying that the combination of adventure and minigames and that kind of stuff was somewhat forward-thinking for a game of this age. The game is from 1989 for reference. And while I can agree to that to a certain point, I do find that a lot of the gameplay feels a bit heavy. The minigames could have been more elegantly done. The overhead map navigation, if you need to travel to a location and there's a town in between, you have to travel to the town first, then exit it to travel to the location you're trying to get to, and that is because of a mechanic that is present in the game that needs to have a chance to trigger, which I find extremely obnoxious, that you have to go through loading in order to get to the location you actually want to get to. instead of just being able to bypass whatever towns are in between your starting position and your destination. Once you've done all your trying to do tasks for people and please everyone and get an army, you can go out and face your uncle's dark army, and then it becomes a semi-tactical gameplay kind of thing. I played that part of the game many years ago, and I actually tried to play it in order to cover it with this video, but because of the arm wrestling being wiggle waggle joystick into oblivion, and my right arm is still not in a good shape, I was unable to beat that event, and you actually need to beat that event in order to prove your strength, and in order for certain people to think that you're heroic and offer you to help you. Technically you don't need to, technically you could bypass those things, but completionist and all that kind of stuff. A few comments besides what I've already covered. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but people have been claiming that the graphics, specifically from this version, is ported from the Atari ST version of this game. And I know that I have been making some snarky comments towards the Atari ST, and that is not very professional, I suppose. But in all honesty, I have nothing personally against the Atari ST. I mean, if people wanted to buy it, they could buy it. I mean, that was entirely up to them. But for me personally, I bought an Amiga. I didn't buy Atari ST. Why would I have to play Atari ST games on my Amiga? For me, it was a bit like going into a 5-star restaurant and then be expected to accept that they are serving supermarket ready meals. You wouldn't do that, and I know that there's a difference in a certain level, but the disappointment when you are expecting something and you are getting something less than what you expected based on your investment, it gets a bit annoying. And it got a bit annoying, and a lot of Amiga owners, I don't think they had anything personal against Atari ST as a computer, but I think they felt shafted by having Atari ST versions instead of proper Amiga versions in many cases. I should say that certain people, certain professional programmers, said that the Amiga could be too bastard to program, and I see no reason not to believe that to be the case, and that is likely why many decided to do the coding on other systems and then transfer to the Amiga. But you can always tell when a proper Amiga game has been made for the Amiga by someone who actually cares about what they're doing and knows what they're doing on the system. And I wouldn't say this game doesn't feel like an Amiga game, but it doesn't feel like an Amiga game. Certain people were claiming that the Commodore 64 version was infinitely better than this game, and in order to verify that, I had a look at that version, and I would say comparing the two versions, none of them are better than the other. They each have their shortcomings, and the artery in the Commodore 64 version, it may be sluggish in the Amiga version, but it's extremely sluggish in the Commodore 64 version, and I found it very unenjoyable. So in that regard, I would say they break even if you consider the pluses and minuses of both. There was not an awful lot of games like Iron Lord, which of course have some sort of not really um, feel of Defender of the Crown. And at some level, you could probably have wished for more games on that genre. And while I wouldn't claim that Iron Lord is a bad game by any means, it is definitely a game that requires a certain level of patience in order to play. And it may be because I'm getting older, it may be because I've been playing thousands of games since then, that my patience is not what it used to be. And I've always been known for not having any patience, so if that's gotten worse, it's not looking particularly good. Showcasing the random event that you need to trigger, and that's why you have to go through towns on the way. There's a chance when you exit a town that you will be jumped by an assassin sent out by your uncle. And by the way, I was completely unprepared for that, so I fail flat on my face and get killed. Ha! Shows how skilled I am. Oh no, though. The game has some good and it has some not so good. I find it hard to enjoy it now, but there was definitely a time where I found this to be a very, very enjoyable game, and I do appreciate what it's trying to do. I don't necessarily feel that it succeeds in what it's trying to do, but 10 out of 10 for effort. I do find it too heavy and too inconsistent to fully enjoy, but it is definitely not unenjoyable. On that note, well, thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye for now.